The mayor told me about Healthy Point and said, you know what, we're doing all this stuff about the body, and we need to do some stuff about the mind, right? Because it's all connected. Our minds live in our bodies, right? So what's happening in our minds affects our bodies, and what's happening to our bodies affects what happens in our minds. So let's have some conversations. So unfortunately, she can't be here tonight. Hopefully she will join us in our next 2 sessions. This is one of 3. We thought it would make sense to kind of begin by talking about common mental health questions that people have. So I'm hopeful that I'll be able to do some talking, and y'all will be able to do some talking, hopefully more talking than me, and that we will leave here with some connections and some thoughts, and with some resources. That sound okay? Okay. So one of the ways that I like to enter into a space is to come into the present. And one of the ways that I like to come into the present is through doing some breathing. I know all of us are coming from whatever we're coming from, and it can be helpful to have a bridge into the present moment. So if you will come with me into this breath exercise, if you're willing, as much as you feel comfortable, please, you are invited to join me. You can put your feet flat on the floor. Uncross your limbs. Allow your shoulders to be down and back. I'm going to invite you to close your eyes if you feel comfortable. If not, please just find a blank spot in front of you to rest your gaze. You don't have to look at me for this. And just coming into awareness of your breath. Allowing yourself to really notice the inhale and the exhale. Noticing the breath without judgment, without trying to control it, just allowing it to be as it is. Allowing your attention to follow where the breath is traveling. Noticing if the breath stops in your chest, if it moves into your stomach. Allowing yourself to notice any places of tension or tightness in your body. Allowing yourself to notice any places where there's space, spaciousness. Allowing any sounds that you hear to just be a part of this experience. Not interrupting the breathing, but just bringing you more and more into this room. Really feeling your feet on the floor and the support of the earth beneath you. Remembering that the earth is always there supporting you. Feeling your body in the seat and allowing for this moment your body to just give the seat all of your weight. Just letting it all go for this moment. Knowing that you are supported and held. Noticing even your spine, the support that you carry around with you every day, in every moment. Noticing your shoulders and your neck. Noticing even your face. Perhaps you're clenching your jaw or squeezing your eyes. And just allowing on the next inhale to release any tension through the following exhale. Taking 3 more breaths in and out at your own pace. And when you're ready, returning to the space. as you return to this space, you might want to just move your shoulders a little bit. Just kind of shaking off the weight of the week. Even if you had a great week, we carry our experiences in the body. Just moving your neck around, shaking that out. Not doing anything that causes pain, but just allowing some space, right? Taking your arms behind you, stretching your chest a little bit, rotating your wrists. So many of us are typing on our computers or phones, and we don't notice, right, how much tension we have in our arms. Shaking those things out, shaking out your legs. And just settling. All right, how'd that go? Good. Good? You feel here? All right, good. So, I invite us into this conversation with three things. I'm only going to ask three things from you, and you can ask the same three things from me. One is presence. And that means that you are here for as long as we're together. And you are as focused as you can be. You got that? Can we agree on presence? The second thing that I'm going to ask for is an attitude of curiosity. Right? That we're going to talk about mental health. And there are those of us in here that might feel like we know a whole lot about mental health. Right? And there are those of us in here who might feel like, not so much. And everywhere in between. So I invite all of us, including myself, to be curious about these moments and what we will discover today. Can we do that? And then the third thing is an attitude of acceptance. And I think acceptance is really interesting because sometimes we think of acceptance as agreement, right? Like if I accept that this thing is true, it means I agree with it. Or sometimes we think of acceptance as resignation, right? Or submission. It is what it is. Acceptance, though, is really about seeing a thing as the thing is, without judgment, without interpretation, without assumption, right? It is saying, this is a pen. I'm not telling you the story of the pen. I'm not assuming what I should do with the pen. I'm not saying I like the pen, I don't like the pen. This is a pen. That's what acceptance is. Looking at a thing with discernment and acknowledging that it is what it is. Can we agree to that? Yeah. Perfect. All right. So, although I'm a psychologist, which means I spend a lot of time talking about what's happening with your emotions and your mind, I really believe that we also have to include the body. So I am going to ask us to do a little bit of movement today to the extent that you feel comfortable. If you don't feel comfortable, that's totally fine. You say, Dr. Green, I don't feel like walking over there. Can I do something else? That's fine. Okay? So, as I said, I'm going to do some talking, and I would like you to do some talking. And I'm going to invite you to do some talking first. So, I have some poster board over there on the stage. And there are questions on each of the pieces of poster board that are asking you about different dimensions of mental health and community. And I thought that we would start there with your voices, because you'll hear enough of me later and in the next two sessions if you come. Welcome. Hi. So, unless anyone has any questions for me, I'm going to invite you to stand, and you can go to any one of those three. And I'd like you to just answer the question according to what comes up for you. No judgment. You don't have to put your name. I'm just curious about what you think. So I'll tell you what the questions are, so you'll know ahead of time. So the first one is, what is the biggest mental health issue facing this community? And so we can think of this community as the community of East Point. You can think of this community as the community of Atlanta. You can think of this community as whichever communities you personally identify with. But I'd like you to think about, what is the biggest mental health issue that is facing your community? The second is, if you could improve something about your community to make the mental health of each person better, what would it be? So the first is, what is the biggest issue or challenge? And the second is, if you could improve something, what would be the thing that you would improve? Would you have more green space? Would you have a clinic that does mental health screenings, like at the CVS, right? Would you increase outdoor community activities? Like, what would you do that you think would bring improvement to each member of the community's mental health? Yeah?
Is it one sentence? Is it just like repeating one sentence?
So no paragraphs, please, because we don't have time. So a sentence or two at the most. Yeah? And then the third question is, what is the most important thing that an outsider needs to know about your community? Right? So let's say someone, an alien, right, from another planet, comes into this room. They don't know anything about you, and they don't know anything about East Point, and they don't know anything about Atlanta. What is something that would be essential for them to know? Got it? Y'all, I'm from a call and response tradition. So when I call, I really do want a response. Yeah?
Yeah.
Look at that. Okay, Friday afternoon, we're all together. So I figure we could do this for about 7 minutes or so. I'll check in with you, and you can tell me if we need more time. Got it? Okay. Maybe I'll give us a little sound check. How'd that go? Yeah? All right, let's see what we got. Biggest mental health issue facing this community: dementia, racism, inflation, bullying, affordable housing, bullying is several times, gang violence, people not taking their medication, anxiety about rising prices, home, food, etc., too many homeless people living on the streets, treating mental health issues like depression, paranoia, etc., lack of access to mental health care, removing the stigma of mental health, and knowing that it's okay to ask for help. Any reactions to that list?
All true.
Anything surprise you? Anything missing?
I will say dementia surprised me,
Yeah.
but it's because, you know, I don't have, my parents are deceased, so I don't have aging parents that I'm dealing with dementia.
Yeah.
So that was an eye-opening thing for me.
I agree. I don't normally see dementia on the list, and I'm glad that it is, right? Because that is a mental health issue. Not only for the person living with dementia, but for the people who are taking care, right? And there often aren't very many resources for either party. Yeah.
I have something to add. It also affects younger people as well, dementia
Yeah.
and mental illness.
Yes.
But to me, we are seeing more of that in the younger, you know, and I'm not sure the cause of it. I know there's a lot of, you know, people on the street. And I've even seen homeless families.
Yeah. Yeah. So when we talk about dementia,
I'm sorry, was there anything on there about sickness or health or COVID or?
no, there was not. I'm going to get a marker. So COVID and like other medical illness.
Is Alzheimer's considered dementia, or do they coincide?
Yes. Yes, Alzheimer's is considered dementia. Any other reactions, thoughts, responses? If you could improve something about your community to make the mental health of each person better, what would it be? provide some type of assistance for homelessness, provide improved counseling for mental health issues, resources for more mental health facilities, educate about mental health, like increase mental awareness, provide more accessible, affordable, free mental health care for everyone, everyday interactions, have someone check on you once a week, improve community, crisis assistance, having the ability to have a crisis counselor respond to 911 calls, not just police, right? So you have the cops show up, but you also have someone who is trained to manage crises, right? A mental health professional. Address drug abuse, community conversations, and more things for the youth to be involved in and young adults. For those who just joined, I asked everyone to answer 3 questions. The first one was, what is the biggest mental health challenge facing your community? And this is the second. If you could improve something about your community to make the mental health of each person better, what would it be? Reactions, thoughts about these responses? Anything surprising? Anything missing?
No, I don't think anything is missing. I just, about the homeless issue, I think a lot of times that there are some underlying issues with the homeless. They are, they have alcoholism, drugs, or maybe some of them are mentally challenged. If that were addressed, perhaps that would decrease the homelessness also. But then I know that sometimes there isn't anything you can do about the homelessness except try, and do the best you can. Some people I know that you could give them somewhere, put them somewhere, but then for some reason they would still, I don't know why they would want to stay on the street, or maybe they're just not comfortable. That may be another thing, they're just not comfortable around here. And that might be another issue that you have to address.
Absolutely. So one of the things I really hear is, although we can look at one problem, it's connected to other
Other
problems,
problems.
right? So we can say, okay, let's solve homelessness, but of course solving homelessness isn't just about providing housing, right? You also have to look at substance use. You also have to look at the underlying psychological pieces that may be a part of that. You also have to look at where this housing is located, right? Are we putting housing in communities where people feel safe, or where people have access to resources? Because maybe there's a great community out here in the suburbs, but there's no MARTA and there's no transportation. So if it's between living on the streets, but I'm close to resources, versus living all the way out here where I have no resources, right? That really can impact how comfortable someone is being housed somewhere that they may not even choose, right, to be housed.
And then is the community comfortable with them?
Absolutely.
That's another problem.
Absolutely, right? So even when we identify one problem, it's connected to a lot of other issues, which of course is the same with psychological and mental health, right? So we can talk about depression and we can talk about anxiety at an individual level, but we also can look at, okay, well, what is the environment that this person goes home to, right? What are the ways in which depression and anxiety is actually a normal reaction to what they're seeing, what they're experiencing, their unemployment, their financial stress, right, their family strain. So when we think about mental health, it is important that we think about it as a web, right? One of the ways that I think about individuals is that every person is like a universe into themselves, right? So you are connected to at least 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 other people, right? And so are you, and so are you, and so are you. So if you come into my office, although only you and I are having a conversation, I know that whatever we're talking about can impact the 2, the 3, the 5, the 10, the 20 other people that are in your life. So whenever we talk about mental health, we actually are always having a conversation about relationships and community, even if we're just talking about one person. Make sense?
Okay.
All right. surprised by this question? I say, we're talking about mental health, and then I ask you, what's the most important thing a person needs to know about your community? Anyone surprised about that question? Why would I ask that, do you think?
Because you could be stressed if you didn't know what you were walking into in a community. It could really stress you out.
Absolutely. Having a sense of the culture of the community, having a sense of what is in the community, right? That can actually help you feel more comfortable. If you don't know, right, uncertainty, human beings, we don't love uncertainty, right? Our brain really likes routine. It's one of the reasons why you can say to yourself, you know what? I know that I normally have ice cream after dinner, but I'm not gonna have ice cream tonight. And then you walk past the refrigerator and guess what happens? Exactly, right? Because the brain loves routine. We have to work really hard to change routine, right? So if you know what you're going into, the brain knows how to navigate that. Even if what you're going into doesn't always feel great, at least it's feeling there. Absolutely. Anybody else have thoughts about this question and why this question belongs in this conversation?
Maybe this neighborhood offers what I'm looking for.
Okay. Maybe the neighborhood offers what you're looking for. And that is a part of your mental well-being, right? And your psychological health, right? Any other reactions? Yes. What is the most important thing an outsider needs to know about your community?
I guess in thinking about what everybody's already said, there are stereotypes that go along with what people perceive about it. That have a tremendous impact on the way people operate externally as well as internally.
Absolutely. 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 Right? So if you wake up in the morning and you look at your community and all you see is what's missing, right? That can really impact how you feel about coming home every day. But if you look at your community and you say, you know what, I really appreciate that I know my neighbor over here, right? And that place makes great chicken sandwiches, right? And that place over there, like, if you're really nice to the cashier, like, she'll cut you a deal, right? Like, when you're able to see your community from a place of strength, from a place of what it does offer, that actually really can impact how you feel about your community and how you feel about yourself. Right? Absolutely. So, here's what we got. We are a community that care for each other and knows about our community. We are individuals, do not generalize us as you've been fed. We try to look out for each other. We offer a lot of community involvement, friendly people in our community. We love East Point, good place for your family. This is a very diverse group of people, and differences need to be recognized and loved, acknowledged without judgment. We are caring, loving people that sometimes get lost. Small community with great potential. Friendly, curious community, good place for families. We are working together to make East Point a place where people work, live, and play. We are diverse, and we have potential. Anything surprise you? No? Any reactions or responses to that?
I was glad to hear that it was positive.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, what was said is true. We were at, what was it, Zumba class? And when somebody took a picture, and when you looked at the picture, you saw how diverse it was. That was the first thing that hit me, how diverse that picture was.
Absolutely.
And it was a group of 4 or 5 women in Colonial Hills. And we had different races, different colors,
Yep.
and that showed what the diversity is here.
Absolutely. East Point is a very diverse community. And when we talk about diversity, sometimes it can mean like chocolate chips in a cookie, right? That the chocolate chips are self-contained, but the cookie is a separate thing, right? But sometimes diversity really can be more like sprinkles, right? We're all actually mixed in together and connected to each other, right? And so when we think about diversity and what it means to live in a diverse community, I think it's helpful to think about it isn't just that difference is present, right? Because that's what diversity means. Diversity means that there's difference. But is there connection, right? Like, are there ways in which difference is not only respected, but seen as a strength and a point of connection? Absolutely. Right.
A place to gather.
A place to gather, right? A place to really be a part of community,
Yeah.
right? Because you can have a bunch of people in the room and not have community. We all know that.
Yes.
Absolutely. Any other reactions or thoughts? Yeah, some good stuff. This felt a little bit like warm chocolate chip cookies. I must admit. My sweet tooth. Now I'd like us to think a little bit more specifically about mental health. And since we're already kind of in a U, I'm going to ask us to gather in 3 groups. So you're kind of like in the middle here, so you can choose which group you'd like to be a part of. But we'll just call this group 1, we'll call this group 2, and we'll call this group 3, okay? So I would like someone in the group to identify themselves as the note taker. Okay? You can take it. Oh, you already have paper. Would you like another? Yeah. Note taker? Let's say someone's avoiding my eyes. Usually that's the person. Okay, so group 1, note taker. I'd like you to spend some time with these questions. Number 1, how do you define mental health?
Are we all writing the same question?
Nope.
Whoops.
You overachiever. Number 2, how do you know when someone is not mentally well? And number 3, what do you do to support someone who's struggling with their mental health? Or how do you support someone who's struggling with mental health? All right, group 2. What do you do when you feel mentally unwell? Number 2, what resources can you access when you or someone you know is mentally unwell?
When you or someone you know.
Is mentally unwell. All right, overachiever. Number 3, what do you think causes mental health problems? And number 2, no. What do you think helps mental health problems? Right? I know, so y'all have 3 questions. So you gotta work faster. 2 and 2. That was it.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
Okay.
So I'm gonna give you, I don't know, I'll check in with you at 7 minutes. 7 minutes seems to be a time I like. And go.
I don't want to turn my back to you, but I gotta be able to write.
I know, right?
And please share the question first.
Okay, the question was, how do you define mental health? And we said state of being, your mindset, if you're healthy or not healthy, acknowledgement of depression and not seeking treatment, health, overeating, undereating, stress eating, how we handle stimulus around us.
All right.
Number 2, how do you know when someone is not mentally well? The person changes physically, mood swings, uncontrolled behavior, eating habits, drinking alcohol, self-medicated, and sometimes you don't know.
You don't know. Absolutely.
know that you are here to listen and let them feel needed.
All right, thank you, Group 1.
Very good, very good.
Group 2.
Our first question is, what do you do when you feel mentally unwell? And we said, call a friend, ride their exercise bike, take a nap, work in the yard, retreat to my room, rake leaves, pray, get still, leave the house, write, listen to uplifting music, dance, ugly cry in the mirror, drive in the car with Tina Turner loud, or get quiet.
All right. Y'all are very healthy. Very healthy coping mechanisms. I gotta say, I don't always get healthy coping.
Oh, I didn't think about that. Oh, we just didn't even go there.
To the unhealthy.
That's a healthy
It's a healthy route, right?
Good job. But now, it's so funny, because now that you've made that suggestion, I'm thinking of all the things that...
Drink another bottle of wine.
Uh-huh.
Now that's healthy.
Stop by the Dairy
you're right.
Queen.
Stop by the Dairy Queen. Go on Amazon one more time to buy another thing,
Add all the stuff to the cart.
right? Mm-hmm. Yep. Yell at your spouse,
Or the dog.
or the dog, or the kids. Absolutely.
What resources can you access when you or someone you know is mentally unwell? The Grady Hotline, Women's Resource Center, Partners Against Domestic Violence, individual therapy, church, and Psychology Today.
Okay. Y'all are just a whole, I'm telling you, health and wellness right here in Group 2. Appreciate that. All right, thank you, y'all. Group 3.
Our first question was, what do you think causes mental health problems? The answers we came up with were drugs, alcohol, genetics / being hereditary, environment, life experiences, stress, depression, unforgiveness of self, that's my favorite answer, cultural trauma, biological warfare, social pressures and influences, peer pressure, and we did have those as separate, isolation, social media / just media, and pride and stigmas.
Okay.
And then our second question was, what do you think helps mental health problems? Access to mental health care, communication, medication, healthy relationships, having facilities available, therapy, education, emotional support. Then we went down a emotional support hole, emotional support being people in your life, being emotional support pets and animals. So we just, emotional support. Being self-aware, as in knowing, I feel off, I'm not on my game. So being self-aware. Pre-screenings at various levels and interventions. So meaning when you go for your regular annual physical, your intern is asking, how are you doing on a scale of 1 to 10? Have you felt like you haven't been able to? So at your wellness visits, whichever wellness visits you go to, having those interventions at various intervals and having more people on your team, so we felt like that would definitely help. Spiritual support. Finding you're happy. Tina Turner music person. Finding you're happy. And then we said music. And then social media / media is on both sides because it's the master and the slave. Because that's the group that I'm in. Yup.
Okay.
And my other favorite, unlearning unhealthy habits.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Can I just say, I really appreciate your willingness to have this conversation. right? Because we often talk about mental health stigma,
Mhm.
and what that can look like is silence, right? That people don't answer the questions, people don't have the conversations, people don't say the things. And for all of your groups to be so lively and engaged, that is pushing back against mental health stigma, right? So that we can have a really normal collegial conversation on a Friday evening about some pretty serious stuff.
But it goes back to your other question about what is community.
Yeah.
My answer was, we are, like, your question was, what would we want someone without any idea of us to know about our community? And my answer really was that we are a community. One thing that I really truly appreciate about East Point is we are given a myriad of opportunities to come together and be together on so many different levels, and it's amazing. Like, this is the 4th year we've done the Healthy Point, right? I didn't participate very much last year. Life, we had to come back outside, and so I didn't participate. So I was like really determined to participate this year. But we have this. We have the East Point Citizens Police Academy. Has anybody done that? I highly recommend it. You go to the police department for a series of 9 weeks, maybe 12 weeks, and you really get to know what our police department does and how it interacts. And like, you get a deep dive. They take you on a ride along. You go to the gun range with them. You get to learn who these people in your community are. And so to have that kind of access, and people are like, why you live in East Point? I said, because I get to know my mayor. I know my mayor. She might not know my name, but she knows my face. I'm not going to get there. Okay, if I lived in Atlanta, I'd be okay because I know Andre because he was on my son's board at his school. But it's not that kind of relationship.
It's true.
You could live anywhere, but I want to know my mayor, and I want to have a relationship, and I want to know my council people, and I want to hold their feet to the fire because they work for me. I don't work for them. So when I said, because it's a community, we are a community, that's what I was talking about. And you're, saying how open we were. We are our neighbors. They might not know my name, and I might not know everybody's name, but I've probably seen your face at one of these other events, the farmer's market, the movie screening, the whatever.
Right.
And it's a safety in that. And I think that's, for me, that's what allows me to just be open and not, be reserved. It also helps that, mental health is my thing, and my mama put me in therapy when I was 16. I've been going ever since. She did. She said, my sweet girl is gone. I don't know who that mama is. But it taught me at a very early age that it was okay to talk to somebody. I'm not feeling right. Feeling comes over you, and it's okay to reach out to somebody and say, I know you don't know me, but help me find my happy again. And so that was one of the reasons why I was like so determined to be here. Breaking my neck to get here from Emory. So I might be a little late on Fridays, but I'll be trying to be here.
Well, thank you for being here, right? And there are several things you said that are actually key to mental well-being. One is community, right? Feeling like you have a tribe. And your tribe doesn't have to be 10 and 15 or 20 people. Your tribe could be 3 people, right? But as long as you have someone in your corner that is a place and is a person where you can show up authentically, right? Where you can say, I'm not having that great of a day, right? Can we talk about it? Where you can say, you know what, like, can we just have dinner together and just spend time, right? Where you can celebrate your wins. And you know that this person is just as happy for you as you are for yourself. I also really heard a sense of empowerment, right? Like I know where I am, I know who I can connect to, I know that these people work for me, which means I feel like I have some agency. So when you feel like you have agency in your life, when you know that you have choices, when you know that you are able to say, I want to do this, I understand X, and I can go to this place or I can go to X, that is actually really key to your mental well-being. When we feel like victims all the time, it's really easy to fall into hopelessness, And I'll tell you, when we talk about suicide, hopelessness, right? Hopelessness and loneliness.
Hopelessness and what?
Loneliness, right? Whether you're talking about whether or not somebody actually has a diagnosis of clinical depression or not, hopelessness and loneliness can be very, very detrimental to a human being. So knowing that you have a sense of agency, right? So having a tribe, having agency, right? Having a tribe is also having community. Knowing where to go, where to look, that's super important. Really understanding yourself. So I always tell people that our bodies are the houses that we live in, and we carry them around everywhere we go. But we're often really disconnected from this house that we live in. And so if the house that you live in, if you notice that there's a leak, right? There's a leak from the roof. It's a little leak. It's not a big leak. And you don't fix the little leak. What happens to the
Foundation is gone.
tear up the whole house, right? And so instead of the, I don't know, nominal amount of money you'd have to pay to fix the little leak, if you wait, right? Like we're talking about, oh, now I need a personal loan, I need thousands of dollars, I might have to leave. So if you think of your body that way, your body is something that communicates to you. Your body is a place of wisdom. And it doesn't just communicate about how you're doing physically, it also communicates about how you're doing emotionally. There are correlations between our emotional experiences and where we feel them in our bodies, right? So I'm all choked up. What emotion does that refer to?
Generally sadness for me.
Right? Right? Usually when people say, I feel a little choked up, you actually have the experience, right, of something in your throat. That's not imagined, right? Anxiety. Where does anxiety live in your body? When you feel anxious? Absolutely. Chest and stomach. Shoulders, too. Absolutely. Right?
Back of my neck.
Back here. So even though all of us might feel anxiety about different things, there's a commonality in where we feel it. So if you notice that your chest is a little tight, right? Your stomach is doing flips, your shoulders, right? You can't quite put them down. You might ask yourself, am I anxious about something? Right? Anybody ever felt a lot of sadness or depression? How does your body feel?
Ooh, look for it, heavy.
Absolutely. It's like you were carrying around the heaviest thing. Absolutely. Not only do you not want to do anything, but it also feels like much more effort to get out of bed, right? That is an actual physical experience that you're having. So as you leave here tonight, I'd like you to keep in mind that you have a lot of wisdom and information that you walk around with all the time. It just needs you to pay attention. Just need to listen a little bit more to yourself. So when you came in, we did a breathing exercise, right? I asked you to feel your feet on the floor, to feel your body in the seat, to notice your breathing. That's listening, right? Listening can look like waking up in the morning and saying, how am I doing? Right? How am I feeling? Going to bed at night, how am I doing? Listening can look like journaling for 5 minutes. It doesn't have to be a big deal, right? Whole sentences and like a whole, it can be bullet points for 5 minutes, right? That can be a way that you have a window into your own thought and emotion processes. Listening, right? Allowing yourself to take time during your day to pause and just hear yourself, just listen. Eating something and noticing what that feels like when you're eating. Okay? There are some things I really love to eat, but my body doesn't love. Right? And sometimes I eat them anyway because I love to eat them, but my body talks to me, right? And sometimes it's loud, right? But that's information. You might ignore the information, but at least know what it is.
I did not receive this message.
Exactly, right? I mean, you know, the body has a way of overriding that, but, right? So please know, right, that you have access to wisdom about how you're doing all the time. I want to honor our time. I know that we are coming to the end. I know I said I would do some talking. I've done a little talking, not too much talking, hopefully. But I wanted to leave you with some resources. if that's okay. Yeah? So I want to say a little bit about I want to say a little bit about this packet, and then I want to say a little bit about legitimate sources of information for mental health, right? Because I told you I'm a psychologist, I'm a trauma specialist. And so, yeah, right. So the people that I see have gone through some of the worst experiences that human beings can experience, right? Ranging from combat veterans all the way to people who have had significant childhood traumas to adult trauma, all of that. But people often come in and they say, you know what, Doc, I think I have depression, anxiety, PTSD, borderline personality disorder, bipolar disorder, right, all kinds of things. I might be paranoid. And I say, okay, well, how do you know that?
Dr. Internet told me.
Well, you know, I looked up on Google, right? And they said, if I have this, and this, and that means, and you know, it's really hard to live with this, and I said, oh, okay, well, can we talk a little bit, right, about what the actual criteria is for this disorder? And can we also talk about the continuum of human experience? Because at any point in our lives, all of us experience deep sadness, fear about something, rumination. Sometimes we feel disconnected, right, from reality. So it's really important that even if you go to Dr. Google, that you also consult a person who is a professional that you can talk to. Because that person can give you a context for what you were saying. And that person can say, you know what, I hear what you're saying, but I can think about, you know, the 300, 400 people I've seen that actually do have clinical depression, and compared to those people, you might be experiencing depression, but it's not that, right? So that person can also give you a perspective that Google can't. Does that make sense? So it's really important where you get your information from. So American Psychological Association is a reliable source of information. Therapy for Black Girls is a podcast that's run by Dr. Joy Harden Bradford. She is actually a psychologist who lives here in Atlanta. NAMI, which is the National Alliance for the Mentally Ill, which is a nonprofit organization made up of people with lived experience, right, of mental health problems. Those are all reputable sources of information. ABPSI, which is Association of Black Psychologists, they have helpful and culturally relevant information, right? These are good sources, right? NIH, good sources of information, right? And when I say good, I mean that professionals, right, contribute to these sources, and as professionals, we have particular standards that we have to adhere to. Not only are there standards around ethics and licensing, but also we go through something called a peer review process, right? So I have published several articles on several things, and a group of my peers who don't know me at all had to read what I wrote, and they had to say, yeah, this makes sense. We can give this to the public, right? Or they say, no, do it again, right? So it's really important where you get your information from, okay? For real. TikTok, let me say something about TikTok. People also come to me and they say, you know what, Dr. Green, I know what my problem is because this therapist on TikTok or Instagram, they said that I'm trauma bonded to this person, or this person is gaslighting me, or I know my father was a narcissist, right? So we have all of this psychological language that can, in some ways can be very helpful for helping us to understand things. But also, the longest TikTok video is what, a minute? Right? A minute. So these can be sources of information, maybe, but please consult someone who you can have a conversation with who's a professional. Because mental health, as all of you know, is multi-layered, and it's multidimensional, and it's more complicated than that. Sometimes people say, oh, I don't need therapy because my social media following is therapy, right? Or Netflix is therapy. Or my wine bottle is therapy. We have all of, or retail therapy, that's my favorite, right? Retail therapy. I'm like, y'all, retail and therapy do not go together, but okay. So, things can be therapeutic, which means they can be helpful, they can be supportive, right? They can be learning experiences without being therapy. Therapy, good therapy, is a process of having a trusted relationship with a professional who can help to lead and guide and support you in your journey of healing and self-discovery. That means it doesn't always feel warm and fuzzy, right? It doesn't always feel easy to do. I definitely have people who are like, Dr. Green, I did not want to see you today. And I say, I'm not going to take that personally. But come on, let's talk about what's going on, right?
What I do to you today?
Right, right? So it's really important to distinguish, right, between therapeutic and therapy. Because they're not the same thing. And sometimes we wait too long to go to therapy. It's never too late, but people who come to see me after 20 years of living with something versus after 5, it is a different conversation.
Much longer conversation, too.
Much longer conversation, right? Sometimes years longer. Okay? So what you have in your hands, the first page is a QR code. I have an Android, and sometimes my Android works the way I want it to, and sometimes it doesn't. So I've also given you a paper version of what is contained in the QR code. The reason I gave you a QR code is because you might want an electronic or a digital version of these resources. So there's a bunch of resources, from books broken down by categories, podcasts that I think are interesting to listen to, actual mental health resources that I think are helpful. There are some hotline numbers at the very top of the first page, so it's a bunch of stuff, right? I encourage you to take some time and look through it. There are resources ranging from finding joy to dealing with grief. So look it over, take some time. I know I'm over time. Any questions for me? Comments or concerns? This is how I end all my sessions. I say, any questions, comments, or concerns, and is there anything that I missed?
I just appreciate the list and the resources, and I appreciate resources that reflect who I am, and probably everybody else around the table. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Because on that social media thing, I follow a lot of wellness stuff because I'm working on me all the time. And one of the sites that I follow, I was, they give you good tips, whatever. So they published a list of resources yesterday, and I needed them to address the feedback that they got. Because, it was mighty bland, is what I will say. And I was like, my comment was, I feel so not seen right now. And literally, that's what all the comments were. And I was like, I'm gonna have to unfollow y'all, because y'all not about to damage me. I do too much work on it, And the other thing I want to say, thank you for Renee. I love Renee. And her other book, You Are Your Own Best Thing, is a good resource too. I like that one. Her essays.
I like Renee. She and I had a conversation that I can tell y'all about a different kind. Brene Brown, are y'all familiar? She's a social worker who is a researcher about shame and vulnerability, which I really appreciate.
Yeah.
And also, I think depending on the identities that you show up with, there are certain spaces where being vulnerable actually isn't that safe.
Exactly.
Right? And I thought it was important for her to know that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
any other questions, comments, concerns?
I just have a comment. I had an illness not long ago, but what it taught me is to be in studies when I'm asked to. I got in a study, a healthline study for people 65 and older, which has really helped because it tells you stuff about your sleep, it tells you about your brain. Because when you go on the on Facebook or anything, you put anything in there about anything you want, you get a million hits telling you 100 things, so you know you have to block all that out. 'Cause all of them can't be true. But the health studies on heart line, I can do an EKG on my watch, you can tell me how much oxygen in the study that I'm doing, because they paired me with my phone with my watch.
Okay.
Which, if you get a chance to be in a study, I know a lot of people don't want to be in it, but you need to know about you.
Yeah.
When I had my breast cancer, what you have is the difference than what I have. So I need a study that's going to study people, or study people like me, you know.
Yeah.
So that's something I learned, so I just wanted to share.
Yeah.
If you're ever asked, you may really think about it's going to help somebody else with that help you need.
I'm glad you had that experience. Yeah, thank you for sharing.
May I add to, does this, okay, that we talk about the mental, there's a trauma injury. Do you address that?
Trauma injury? Do I personally address it, or are we going to talk about it collectively?
Either.
Yes, I personally address it. That's my work. Do you mean traumatic injury like a physical injury, or you mean
A
like,
physical injury, where the brain was damaged.
like traumatic brain injury?
TBI.
Right. No, I don't address traumatic brain injuries. I have worked with people who have had psychological trauma and traumatic brain injuries, or TBIs. If you have like more specific questions about resources for that, for example,
Resources
I
for
can,
that person.
I can look for that. So I spent some time in the VA, so a lot of my references for traumatic brain injuries come from that world. But let me think about kind of the community resources that might be available to non-veterans.
Or maybe even a car accident
Yeah.
that somebody made.
But you do have on maybe the last page or so, she has the Emory Psychiatric
We did
information
down
in
that
there.
road.
No, it wasn't helpful.
It wasn't helpful.
Okay.
We did down that road. A friend of mine had a fall, was knocked down in the basketball court. And all she could describe was that my brain shook.
Okay.
And no one, she's still now living 8 years.
Oh my gosh. Okay. All right, I'll think about if I can be helpful to that.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, concerns, anything I missed?
Thank you for your time this evening.
Oh, good.
This was a
Thank you for your time.
Great way to end the week.
All right, y'all. Give yourselves a round of applause. I hope to see you next month. It's the third Friday in April, I think. Shannon, is that correct?
14.
Is it the 14th? It's the same time, same place, same person.
Same batch.
April 14th, right? So thank you so much for being here. Yes, ma'am?
Can I just make a little announcement about so tomorrow is our kickoff for the Saturday Farmers and Artisan Market in front of City Hall. I'll be doing, I'm a chef. I'll be doing a chef demo tomorrow.
Did you make the soup last week?
I did make the
Oh my
soup
God,
last
it was so